On February 15th, 1978, Whitney Houston joined her mother, the legendary Cissy Houston, to perform at the Town Hall in New York City, where the young vocalist made her debut performance at the historic concert hall, singing the popular show tune Tomorrow from the popular Broadway musical Annie. Next year marks the 47th anniversary of her Town Hall performance debut and the 40th anniversary of the release of her groundbreaking self-titled debut album, Whitney Houston. On Saturday, February 15, 2025, the Town Hall will celebrate Houston and the premiere of The Voice of Whitney, a symphonic celebration conducted by internationally renowned conductor and music director Sean Mays. Welcome to this edition of Backstage Pass with Leah Chang. I'm your host, Leah Chang. Today, I'm at Town Hall with Sean Mays. We're going to be talking about the Whitney Houston concert, if you will. All things Whitney, all things Pops of Color Orchestra, all things Sean Mays. Today, welcome, Sean. I'm so happy that we have the time for us to sit and chat. Let's start.
Me too, Leah. Thank you.
At the beginning. Let's talk about the concert first.
Yeah, so February 15th, coming up next month, about a month away now, which is wild to think about, but so exciting. We are doing a concert of a program called The Voice of Whitney, a Symphonic Celebration. And so we are doing that in conjunction here at Town Hall with the launch of a brand new orchestra that I have founded, which is called Pops of Color. And Pops of Color, of course, is a new organization that we founded with the interest of basically two specific goals. One is to feature only musicians of color in our makeup on stage.
Because you can.
Because we can, and because we should. And the second is to feature within that with our rep and the music that we choose to play and to program is to celebrate the icons and the musicians and artists of color that have paved the way for all of us. And it's a great opportunity to do it with Whitney as our first concert. How
did you decide to create Pops of Color Orchestra?
It's a great question. I mean, my life has always been in arts education. It's always been my first love. And when I moved to New York almost about a decade ago now, I started doing a lot of work with various arts organizations here in the city. And I would go out as a teaching artist into schools and do that sort of engagement with students, kind of from a variety of different angles, you know, with music and drama, et cetera, et cetera. And I would go out into these schools and you know, end up having the opportunity to see just how broad a spectrum of really amazing young people we have in New York. And when you are trying to bring arts ed into different parts of the city, of course, there's so many different approaches in terms of the students that you find. But one of the most interesting things I would find is I would go in these schools and the students would just be obsessed. They'd be so energized, so thrilled to have the opportunity to engage in this type of content. And I realized that it really wasn't about me being the teacher in front of them, but they were like, we have somebody who's in front of us who looks like us, who's giving us this opportunity to think and feel and grow through music, through art in this way. And so that sort of got my brain churning and thinking, and then over the years, in conjunction with all that work as an arts educator, I've been doing a lot of work as well as a conductor. That's my life as a conductor and music director as well.
Well, I want to say, I want to be very specific and strategic about our personal connection.
Yeah.
That I met you because you were the music director and orchestrator and conductor for Andre de Shields when he had his Black by Popular Demand, or How Not to Be Eaten by the Sphinx at 54 Below and at the Cabaret in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
But I also got to see you in action with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra.
That's right.
And the City College Choir.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, there is nothing more exciting than watching Sean Mays in action, whether he's on stage as a conductor, but more importantly, you teaching. I remember Lori one day saying, I'm getting a little verklempt as I say this. Lori one day saying, if I had had someone like him when I was developing as a musical artist, I would be in a much different place. And the idea that students today get to experience you and what you do, and now very excitingly through Pops of Color, it's just everything.
Thanks, Leah. It's it's been a real labor of love for many years, and I've run the idea by so many people and by colleagues and family and loved ones and friends, and so to be at this moment where we're actually sitting here at Town Hall and to be able to also just kind of look at how all of the roads have aligned in such a specific way. You know, the Town Hall, a lot of people in New York don't know about the Town Hall because it doesn't function in the same capacity that a lot of like the surrounding Broadway theaters function in, right? But it is founded in 1921 by the suffragette movement. Like, it has always been this incredible institution that has been dedicated towards advancing the cause of just human, people on the right side of human history. Right. So you get all sorts of, in the early years, it's like you have Strauss and you have Rachmaninoff doing things on the stage, but then you get into like the 30s and 40s and 50s, and you see the integration of the jazz scene here, and you see people, and the classical scene, and you see people like, Marian Anderson, Paul Robeson, right? Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen on the other side of the spectrum, right? Including to like non-artistic and musical things like Eleanor Roosevelt having radio talks on this stage, to like just this past year when Kamala Harris was sitting right here on this stage, right? So it really has been always this sort of beacon of having an ability to just voice a desire to move towards the common good. And I think that is what makes this so special for me and appropriate, is that we are in a building where we can literally feel the presence of artists and artists alike who have for the last 100+ years now been like, we are going to do what we need to do to make sure we are moving forward. And this, and my sincere hope is that this is a part of that, because we also get to celebrate that now as an in-house institution here, as doing this in conjunction together in partnership with Town Hall, and saying, we have the ability to think about what this realm looks like. What does an orchestra look like to young people, especially? I mean, across the board, right? We need to, and we know we're having all of these conversations about what does art look like? What is it? How, who's coming to these concerts, right? Especially in the symphony, the orchestra realm, in the pops realm, especially within which I work. But the idea of being able to amplify that even more and say, great, now we have bigger work to do, because it's not just about putting on a good concert, even though it's always about that here in New York. But it's not just about that. It's about making sure that we are doing the groundwork to say, okay, young people who are going to have the opportunity to come out and see great art and hear great music are going to see themselves represented in a way that they likely haven't before.
Right.
And to be able to celebrate people that they, at this point, actually might not know as well, I mean, a lot of younger people, oddly enough, now we're starting to get to a point where it's like we're in a new generational cycle, right? We get the actual opportunity to actually teach them about who Whitney was.
Right.
And their parents can also come and enjoy the music as well. And they can sit in these seats here and look on stage and see a violist or a tuba player or a guitarist or somebody on the stage and be like, oh, I never thought that would be something that specific that I can do. But because this is also music that like I've heard in my house growing up all my life. I have a different way into this now. Maybe that can be me, and that's part of our educational programming as well. As we are going to be doing some in-school installations as well, which is really exciting. Going out into New York City public schools, including one in New Jersey, of course, where Whitney was from.
Sure.
And we're going to be doing that work, and also having an opportunity just to teach some lessons about who she was, so that when these students come to this concert, they'll have a broader understanding of that as well.
So I'd like to know what the significance of Whitney Houston and Town Hall. What is the connection?
There's a huge one, and it's actually something that I didn't even really know about. We found out, this has been a part of, again, the story of how deep the roots in this hall run. Whitney had her debut at this hall. So
wow.
So that was it was right here on the stage. She had her first ever major public performance. And so it was back in 1978. She was here on the stage of the hall. She was 14. And her mom, Cissy Houston, was here performing her own concert. Mm-hmm. And so Whitney and her brother were a part of that concert. And there is an interview actually with Oprah from 2009.
The Oprah interview.
The Oprah interview
with Whitney Houston.
Where they sit and they like literally in these spots and they talk about that and they say, Oprah talks to her and she says, I thought we were going to do this at your place in Newark or something because you're just across the river.
Sure.
And she points over to the wings and she's like, it was right there. My mom was standing where we are.
Right.
And she's like, it was right over there. She signaled for me to come out, and I came out on the stage and I sang Tomorrow from Annie. And she's like,
ooh, I'm getting chills.
It's wild stuff. And there was a pause and the whole audience rose to their feet and rushed the stage. And her mom turned to her, and she says this in the interview, which is, it's definitely worth the watch if you can check it out online too. She says, that was the moment that my mother told me, you have a gift from God, and this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And she's like, it was all right here on the stage where it started.
All right here.
Right here.
Right here.
So when we realized that, we had done the Voice of Whitney, we've done, I conducted the premiere of it out at the Ravinia Festival in last August.
Which was a huge success.
Huge success, and was, really, I mean, again, we had, it's just been great to see the outpouring around the world because of who she is, and but we did that. There was also another concert at the Kennedy Center in this past November, which was also a sold-out success. And so this is the first time now that we get to do it here in the New York, New Jersey area, so close to home for her. And we get to say, this is our ability in as close a way as we will ever be able to pay homage to her in the city and the area, the metropolitan that made her, and to be able to honor that and really celebrate that. And we're going to have some parts of the concert that are unique to that as well, which I won't give any details away, but you'll have. So I never thought I would, but I wrote an opera. It's a new piece called A Portia Cryptic.
Is this the first opera you've written?
It's my first opera.
Okay, so it's your
just getting started, but
debut opera that you wrote and orchestrated?
I did it composed, orchestrated, arranged. A new piece called A Portia Cryptic, a black opera for Portia White. And it made its world premiere, its world debut at the Canadian Opera Company this past June. And what is actually very interesting about that is that Portia had her international debut right here on this stage as well.
Whoa!
Yes, So
Okay.
she came down here, I believe it was 1943, if my memory serves correct. But I might not be quoted on that. But it was the early 40s, and she came down here, had a first concert, was such a success that they booked her 2 more times, and that's what was the launch for her international career.
And prior to your working on it, did you know about her?
About Portia White specifically, I didn't really, which was the wild thing. I studied classical voice at university as well, so it was kind of wild to have the knowledge of saying, wait, I had gone through a major Canadian institution in arts education in the specific field as an artist of color, right? As a, and to have that and be like, oh, I've never heard of who she is, right? And so I had gotten whispers of that through other, members of my faculty and stuff. But I was like, why don't I know who this is? This is crazy, right? And so that was another layer of that altogether, where I think one of the interesting things about doing a project like this is that there's so much work to do in really, I think it's, I don't want to say like it is uncovering, but it's more recovering our histories, because there's so much talk about the first blank and the first this and the first that. And I think what we're seeing more and more now is that we approached the Portia project, and everyone was like, well, the first Black Canadian contralto. And it's so important to amplify that and look at that, but it's also like, what about everything before that and everything after that too, right? And so I think because we're in this period of trying to say, hey, let's just like get caught up in like, our histories have been written in such a way that we are just trying to get back in via the way of being like, well, here are the token people that were doing this thing. And it's like, what we actually need to do is we need to zoom out enough that we can say, great, let's bring this person back in. And also, like, these are entire networks of performance locally, nationally, internationally, that were happening the whole time. We just didn't know about them. We just don't know about them because
They were not allowed to be amplified.
not allowed to be amplified. There wasn't the infrastructure to be able to make sure that that was well known, right? And it's the same thing in Canada. When we did the Portia White project with the opera, most people didn't know who Portia was at all, even just as a singer. And she was a major international figure, which the irony was she was more known internationally on that end. And then she came back to Canada and did not have the same success that she had internationally.
Right.
She really struggled to break in Canada.
Well, isn't that the same actually for most artists of color? They had to go to Europe to really be feted, lauded, celebrated, employed.
It's the same path.
Employed,
it's the same
whether
path.
it's Josephine Baker, certainly Anna May Wong. In my category, hello.
Yeah, it's the same path, right?
Now,
over and over again, we see that, right?
Now, another thing that's happening for you in Canada is The Lion King. What's going on with The Lion King for you?
So I'm the conductor. I'm the music director, conductor of the production of The Lion King. There's a new, completely local, completely Canadian sit-down production of The Lion King, and that for me it's a pathway as I'm taking over as the next worldwide musical supervisor of the show. So I'm in Toronto now with in my hometown. Representing and helping to get that company up off the ground, and have been there through opening, through the fall, and so now we're off to the races running on that, and then shortly start bouncing around the world, the U.S. national tour. So it's quite an extensive reach in Toronto, of course, and we've got new productions opening up, all the time, right? So it's been a real special process for me so far, and it's beautiful to get into the tapestry of what the show is and the detail and the amount of detail that has gone into it. And I think the cool thing really is just to see how much people light up in seeing this story, which is so universal, so timeless. But also it's bigger than that for me, because there is such an amount of excellence that is on that stage, and excellence that is tied into numerous cultural references. And so to see people sit in an audience and witness and experience that and be just rejuvenated and energized from that in such a specific way, in a generational way, with their children or their parents or their grandparents beside them, it's quite something. It's a really, really, really special piece, and I'm really
happy to be part of the Disney Lion King
so
family.
Humbled, right? I've been a part of the Disney family for years, and I'm really humbled to be stepping into this as another version of it. It's cool stuff. Really
Excellent.
Cool. Really enjoying.
You also authored your second book.
That's right.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, I wrote recently. I had a text. It's been over a year now, which is wild to think about.
That's okay. Still to be launched properly.
Yeah, similar vein. It's called Conversations in Color, Exploring North American Musical Theater, as a subtitle as well. And yeah, the book is a collection of interviews from an array of the top practitioners in our field. And so the idea behind that it was based on actually another book that already existed, called Creating Musical Theater, and which was an interview text, and a book that I've loved for years. But I was like, we need to do this again.
You need to update it?
Yeah, it's like it's time to come into 24, 25.
We need to diversify.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's that simple, right? So I set about trying to do that, and was so lucky to have numerous interviews with many friends and colleagues in the business. I mean, we go right across. Andre wrote the foreword, which is fantastic.
Andre
he wrote the intro, which is cool. So it starts off on as best a foot as you could ask for. But we go through. We have Bjork Lee. We have Stafford Arima from Theatre Calgary. We have Alex Lackamore in it as well. Masia Sare, who lyricist, composer as well. It's just like a wild,
it's like
Rick Sordelay, who's who of the business. Rick Sordelay has been a fight director with Disney for years and years, and so it's this wide angle of Shelley Williams, who recently directed The Wiz, the revival of The Wiz and The Notebook.
And that you also worked with on
the Mandela Project over
in London, which I got to be there for opening night. I was so happy to be able to celebrate that opening night with you.
Yeah, it was really cool to just spend the time to sort of, and the conversations, it's a very easy read, but my hope is really that it continues to be an inspirational piece for young people trying to get into this business, because certainly there was nothing like that existed when I was coming up through the ranks, when we were coming up through the ranks.
Right.
And it's really cool. It was really cool to have the opportunity to be able to sit with them, and it was a big pandemic project as well. But so now, through Bloomsbury Publishing, it's available online.
Thank you for joining me for this edition of Backstage Pass with Leah Chang. Until next time.